Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we will be discussing a product that touched the lives of everybody in this arena in digital media device land and across the globe. Living or dead, you saw this thing. You enjoyed it. Your children enjoyed it. Your grandchildren bothered you endlessly. And so forth and so on. And generations are still discovering it now. It's an iconic console from Nintendo, which for the most part has done nothing but iconic consoles. But this is probably their greatest achievement. This is the Nintendo 64. If you don't know what we are, this is Why Does This Exist? We are a podcast that talks about the very weirdest in pop culture. Anything that really shaped pop culture in some bizarre way, whether it be a product like we're about to do, some music like we did a few weeks ago, or a iconic TV series like we just did last week with The Sopranos. We'll discuss it. We will have a grand old time, and that's about all that I got to say about that. Let me just run over my quick spiel. You can support the podcast in a number of ways. The easiest is, of course, to do what you're doing now and just listening to the show, telling a friend or a family member that you dislike to take a look at this, and then just wander off and just leave this to be their problem. You can head on over to our YouTube channel, which some of you may be listening to it on. Do all of those nice little things, liking, comment, subscribe, and we just want to get to 50 people. 50 will be nice. 100 will be better. Spread the word. Tell them these guys are morons, but you don't really have to do anything. Just hit the button. You don't even have to listen to it, and then be on your merry way. That's fine, too. I'm pretty sure you could possibly find us on social media, but I wouldn't count on it, because the degenerates at the Facebooks or the metaverses or whatever they are, I got hacked. They chose to do nothing about it, and they banished me to the realm of jailed accounts. So I'm still in. I'm perpetually in Facebook Guantanamo Bay with no hope of getting out because they shut it down already. So not great. So maybe we're on social medias, maybe we're not, but who cares? You could give us money by heading over to patreon.com/whydoesthisexist. We've got new articles and things happening all the time from our man Tony, who is constantly doing all this to support his 577 children. And, let's just say Tony believes in polygamy. And he's also not a fan of marriage. So let's just say Tony does what Big Daddy Dudley used to do. And just like the Dudley Boys, his version of the Dudley Boys, the Tony children, will discover who their daddy is at various points in their lives, and they will create a wrestling stable together one day. However, Tony gave his name to all of these lovely ladies, and now Tony has to pay a lot of alimony and child support and all these other things to support the Tony children who will grow up to become wrestlers. That's the name of the charity that we're doing this for. The Tony children who will one day grow up to become wrestlers. Give us money on a Patreon. We'll let you into the Discord server, and then Tony can eat. His children are fine, but Tony needs to eat so that he can write stuff. You could also buy us coffee at buymeacoffee.com/whydoesthisexist. There's no subscription. You give us money once, and then you go on your merry way. That's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues, so let's get on with the goddamn show. Why don't you tell these fine boys and girls and children and adults and seniors of all ages, shapes, sizes, and forms what the hell the N64 is and what it means to you.
So the N64 is probably one of the greatest video game consoles of all time. It was first released in Japan.
I think it's the greatest.
I personally, I think it's the greatest too. It's my favorite console of all time. It was released in Japan June 23rd, 1996, and in North America on September 29th, 1996. And it is probably, I mean, it was the first like real true 3D console that Nintendo had released. There was some games on the Super Nintendo that used the what was the name of their 3D chip that they had on Super Nintendo? I don't remember off the top of my head. But really, there was nothing that could compete with like the Nintendo 64 because it had.
Do you mean the expansion pack?
No, it was something. There was a chip that was in the Super Nintendo that like was showcased specifically on games like Star Fox, the original Star Fox.
Ah, okay.
That used 3D, but it, of course, that was 16-bit graphics, so it was.
You mean the SGI RPC? Is that what you're talking about?
No,
all right.
It was something else like that. This was Nintendo's jump from 16-bit to 64-bit, which, for those who don't know, during the 90s, that was all about the bit wars. It started off with the 8-bit consoles, which was like the NES and the Sega Mega Drive, or the Sega Master System, rather. Then came the Super Nintendo and the Sega Mega Drive, which were the 16-bit era. And there were some companies that kind of tried to release like consoles in between that were like 32 bits, and they didn't do as well. I think Sega had like a 32. Well, Sega had the attachment for the Genesis, that was the 32X, which upgraded the Genesis to 32-bit. But really, like, most companies went right from 16 to 64, and that was true of Nintendo as well. Sega had their console. They had the Saturn, and the PlayStation 1 had come out also around that time. But this was Nintendo's like first foray into the 64-bit realm.
It was also the first console to have 3D graphics.
Yes, it was Nintendo's first console to have 3D graphics. Yeah.
No, it was the first.
Was it? Because I'm pretty sure, didn't the PlayStation 1 come out before the Super Nintendo?
I thought that, but I saw something just now that said it was that the Nintendo 64 was the first.
Huh.
So let me double check that.
No,
but continue.
Japan in 1994.
Ah, so then Google lied.
Yes.
All right. It's that AI generative Google that's just making mistakes all over.
Yeah.
And rewriting history because Nintendo maybe bribed them.
Yeah.
I'm drawing my own conclusions, but that's probably the logical thing.
However, that being said, okay,
foul play in the console wars.
PlayStation was the first of the 3D. Well, I think it was the biggest of the bigger, because there was other 3D consoles too, like the 3DO and the Atari Lynx, which like nobody played pretty much. So
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, Atari Lynx was Atari's 64-bit console that I believe came out even earlier. And
I had no idea Atari even did a 64-bit console.
Oh no, the Lynx was the handheld. What was the Atari Jaguar? Was the 64-bit console. It was not well received. Oh, it was only 32-bit actually.
Ah, okay.
But Atari marketed it, so it had two 32-bit processors, and Atari marketed it as a 64-bit console, even though
that's a lie. That's not good. Bad Atari. Very bad Atari. This is why you have no business now.
It was not a well-received console. Had really not a lot of very good games on it, and
Well, sure, everyone found out they were lying.
by all accounts, it didn't work very well either. So it was, uh,
They got
so
caught in a lie.
I would say Nintendo 64, despite coming a little bit later than the PlayStation, had the better games, and that was always like the schoolyard thing that we talked about growing up. Was like, that PlayStation had the best graphics, but N64 had the best games.
Yes.
Uh, and right off the bat, you had Super Mario 64, which was the first 3D Mario game and one of the greatest games of all time. And it really, Super Mario 64 really like made what like having like what a 3D platformer could be. Like that was like the prototype of the 3D platformers. And it's funny because Bubsy 3D, which is like regarded as one of the worst 3D platformers of all time and makes no sense, like the way the controls are and everything, came out and was in development at the same time, and it was such a bad game compared to Mario 64 was like, this is what a 3D platformer has to be. Like the way the camera worked, the controls worked, and everything, it was like perfect. So it really set the stage for that generation of consoles because and then you had all of Nintendo's IPs kind of like being ported to this 3D genre now. Like we had Ocarina of Time, the first 3D Zelda game, which it's at that up until that point, Zelda had always been like a top-down thing. So now it's like it's a whole new realm because the camera's different and the lock-on system and everything. And a lot of people say that the lock-on system hasn't really held up, like it wasn't really that great of a system, but I think it was pretty good for the time, especially, and I mean, even today, like a lot of like, action RPGs like that or action adventure games use a lock-on system similar to Zelda's. So, you know, despite what most people say, it was actually, it's still kind of used today. Obviously, it's been improved, but whatever. Again, so Ocarina of Time really kind of helped set the stage for later games. And this was kind of like the theme on the Nintendo 64 is that all the games that came out really like were like kind of like the precursors of what like we know today in each genre. Like you had GoldenEye 64, which was like one of the best like shooter games of all time, and really like
I mean,
showed that like
that's one of those games where, like, if you're fortunate enough to go somewhere where to somebody's house or something where they still have an N64, GoldenEye is pretty much one of the first
yes,
three things that's going to come up. It's usually going to
yes,
be, do you have GoldenEye? Do you have No Mercy? Do you have Mario Kart?
yes, yeah. And GoldenEye was really like the party game. Like every time like
Oh
growing up we
yeah,
went to someone's house, we were playing GoldenEye. We would always have like rules like no odd job and all that because odd job was cheap.
yeah.
Um
Slappers only.
yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't go wrong with this console. I mean, also you couldn't get away from the console.
Yeah.
Like I
I,
would
I mean
say, like it wasn't like how we said at the Sega episode where or the Sonic episodes and anything to do with Sega that we've done, where you saw like you either had Sega or you had Nintendo. It was like it wasn't like that with like PlayStation or Nintendo at the time. You like usually the person had both because there were just so many because the games were so different and everybody and everybody loved both of them so
yeah.
much, and you also like you had kids who were a little bit more grown up at that time, so it wasn't even like, oh well, like it was like the kids who were either really young and had the Super Nintendo or had older siblings had um that had the Sega. They at this point both kids had been are old enough where they've like grown apart in some ways where where the older kid is probably going to have the PS1 and the younger sibling is going to have the Nintendo 64, and both of them have games that they're going to like for both consoles. So it was really a win-win at that time for that same generation of people, or of
Yeah.
kids rather.
Yeah. Uh and it was interesting because I didn't like I believe I got the N64. I think it was my Christmas of 1998, I believe, is when I got it. I think, because I remember there was a couple of games that or it might have been, I might have gotten it in 97. I don't 100% remember. But because there wasn't many games out for it, but I had Mario, like the first games that I had were, of course, Mario 64. I had Super Mario Kart, and then I had Turok. Was one of the first games I got for it, the original Turok Dinosaur Hunter. And I remember that was like such a great Christmas. I had wanted the N64 so bad, and because I only had a Super Nintendo at my house, and my uncles got it for me and like those games for Christmas, and I remember like just like like hours playing like all Super Mario, like exploring Super Mario 64. Like it was being like a kid and never having like experienced something that big before. It felt like a giant open world, and like obviously going back now, it's like after like playing like Skyrim and all these other like Grand Theft Auto 5 were these huge worlds. It's like, wow, like Mario 64 does seem pretty small, but like back then it was a whole like different world, and it felt like you were in this gigantic world, even though it wasn't that big.
Yeah, I mean now it feels like it's enough. It feels like
Yeah.
it's big enough.
Well,
But
Mario
back then it did feel tremendous.
for being
Because I mean, also you were like, it was just such a different concept. Where in the older Mario games, you're like in an open, you're just out in the world, like going to find the castles. Where
yes,
with this one, the whole layout was totally different because you're
yeah,
actually in the castle and like jumping. Like even jumping into the paintings and seeing the shimmer for the first time was
yeah,
just like mind blowing as a
yes,
kid.
yeah. Uh, I and I forgot I just lost my train of thought. What I was gonna say. Oh
This was
yeah,
also the era where like things started to look real,
yeah. Well, I mean, as real as they could.
as
Like
real
if
as they
looking
could at
back,
the yes,
it's not that great, but
as real as they could at the time. But
yes,
this was the point where like you started to notice like, oh crap, they had the processing power where they could start like you could like looking back now, you could see how this set the stage for everything after it, on how everything started to look more realistic to the point
yes.
where eventually like it's going to get pretty indistinguishable.
Well, for the time, again, what we had growing up, like the graphics were like amazing because like we didn't
Oh
know
yeah.
any other like better graphics. So like,
No, you went from like, how could you? You went from 32
right,
bits and side scrolling to this,
yeah,
where like the closest thing that you could get to like 3D, the most advanced thing, had really just been polygons. Where now they
yeah,
could do like, yes, they were still polygons, but they could do more with them, and there was just a whole nother dynamic that
yeah.
it just looked. It was just such a. It was just such a different presentation from what you were used to.
Especially like the more cartoony games that looked great, like Banjo Kazooie
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Like it looked great with the 64-bit graphics. Like some of the more like realistic games like didn't hold up as well. Like GoldenEye, you look at the like faces and they look
Oh
like
yeah,
so
now it
bad.
doesn't.
But like,
Or like any of the or like the blockiness
yeah,
of any of the wrestling games now.
yeah, or like the
Like
freaking
No
like
Mercy looks like it could have been done with like Minecraft now.
yeah, 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 or like the freaking the Great Fairies in Ocarina of Time with like the pointy boobs, like their boobs are laid at
Oh,
like pyramids. That's like
that's just such a weird design
it
in
was. It was
general.
like
It was like, why do they need to be like super duper busty?
well,
But I
and
mean,
like
well, it's
also like
also
very
fantasy.
scantily clad too. They were just
Yes.
wearing like basically like friggin' like ivy like leaves
Yeah,
all over them.
yeah, I remember as like a 7 or 8 year old, I was like, "Oh, am I supposed to be watching
Yeah,
this?"
yeah,
Like,
I was like, this is scandalous. Like And,
Uh,
of course, like,
let's
later on, I would play, Duke Nukem 64 where there's literally, like, dancing, like, friggin' strippers and stuff, and, of
yeah,
course, I shouldn't have been playing that 'cause, that was, like that was the Wild West of video games where, like, they had just created the ESRB, like, a couple of years before, but, like, parents really still hadn't caught on yet. So you could,
yeah,
like, go to the store with your mom and be like, "Oh, I want this game," and it's, like, Doom 64, and she'd be like, "Oh, well, I don't know, it looks scary," and you'd be like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll be fine," and, like, she would just buy it for you, not knowing that it was, like, full of blood and gore and,
yeah.
friggin', like, horrifying for a 7-year-old, you
Oh
know?
yeah, I mean, look, I mean now it looks like spaghetti sauce, but yeah, back then
Yes.
that was like all that you could compare it to.
Well, yeah, but of course, like, me playing it at 7 years old, I'm, like, scarred for life because of, like, the shit like, it was, like, one of the scariest games ever, Doom 64, because it wasn't like, the original Doom on PC had, like, the kinda, like, more metal soundtrack, so, like,
Hmm.
kinda sounded more badass, but, like, Doom 64, it was just, like, this dark ambience with, like, monsters moaning and, like, electronic sounds from, like and it was really dark. Like, there was no light anywhere. It was, like, pitch black in all the places, and, like so it just looked scary, and it sounded scary, and it was that they redesigned all the demons to look even scarier than they were in the original. So, it was like, it was a scary game, especially for the time, because there really hadn't been anything like that except for the actual original Doom, and, like I said, this was, like, scarier than that.
Yeah,
And then,
I remember I remember like, I remember my parents. Well, I remember my dad seeing the blood after someone got hit with a chair in like WrestleMania 2000,
yeah.
and him freaking out and just being like, "Oh my God, you can't play this with the blood on," and is or like seeing Mortal Kombat, he just like hated all the time.
Well, I mean,
So
Mortal
like,
Kombat's, like, extreme.
uh, yeah, but but like just seeing I remember seeing the Quan Chi fatality where like he rips the guy's legs off and proceeds to beat him to death with it, and
Yeah.
just like just thinking, oh my god, they've really like this is super excessive, and my dad just being like, you can't play this game at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, playing friggin' Turok at 7 years old, again, another one I shouldn't have been playing, and it's like,
Oh yeah,
you're shooting the guy, and, like, of course, you go to the school the next day, and you're like, "Oh, I played this awesome game, Turok," where, like, you shoot a guy in the neck and blood shoots out everywhere, and, of course, it's like this, like, really terrible pixelated, like, bl crappy looking blood, but, like and then Turok 2 even got more extreme because you could, like, blow holes in the friggin' enemies and, like, you could see their ribs and stuff, and it was like, "Wow, this is, like, really gory." But, like, you play it now, it's like, "Oh, it's actually not that bad." It's kinda like cartoony gore, but, like, back then, it was like, this was, like, real gore.
oh yeah. Same goes for Resident Evil because the
Oh,
can't
yeah.
because like well, first of all, you had the cameras, which were awful.
Yes.
So that made it even worse because you start getting eaten out of nowhere and you can't do anything because you can't move the camera. So you're running around to try to find out what's doing anything to you.
Yep.
And and plus, like, you're playing it probably at night. So it's like 10 times as traumatic.
Oh, yeah. Me and my
But
buddy, we used to play Resident Evil 2, like, for hours at a time, and, like, I remember, like, being so scared of Mr. X because he would just like, break through the wall and, like, destroy you, and, of course, I played the Resident Evil 2 remake, and that he's even worse than that because he actually roams around to look for you, and it's, like, dynamic. In the original N64, it was, like, scripted events when you fought Mr. X, and he was a lot easier to get past because you could, like of course, we would use, like, Game Shark cheats. So we would have, like, the rocket launcher and, like, the Tommy gun, like, all, like, the best weapons. And, you could just, like, blow him away with the rocket launcher and then just, like, walk past him because, like, he wouldn't get back up, in the original. So, uh,
mhm,
and that was another, like, just amazing aspect of the N64 was all the cheat codes that they had for all the games. Like, because first of all, they had the Game Shark, which for those who don't know, back in the day, Game Shark was this, like, extra little cartridge that you got for your console, and they had it for, like, everything. They had it for N64, they had it for the PlayStation 1. Um, they had something for the Super Nintendo. It was called the Game Genie. So, or that was
yes.
or for the NES, maybe.
That was for the NES. It was a
Yeah.
Game Genie.
but the Game Shark was like the new one, and it was like, Game Shark, and like, so you would plug it into your N64, and then you would plug the regular cartridge, like your game, on top of it. It had like a double like cartridge port, and then you could go in and like activate all the cheat codes. So like, I used to like not do it to beat the game. I would do it just to have fun. Like I would put in the cheat codes in Turok just stay in one area and blow up people with like slow mo on and watch them fly through the air and stuff. Like I wasn't playing it to like, oh, I got to cheat to win, because like I was playing it because I was like, oh, this is more fun this way, because you could do all
Oh,
this crazy stuff.
I had to
And
cheat to win.
some games I had to cheat to win. There were like a lot of hard games. I mean, there's a reason why like Nintendo hard is like a term, because like Nintendo always had very hard games, and going all the way back to the NES and up to the N64. They Nintendo's interesting because it's got this interesting learning curve with their games, where it's very easy to pick up a Nintendo game and learn how to play it, but to master it is like a huge learning curve. So like Mario 64, the early levels are very easy. It's really easy to get going and like, but like if you really want to like 100% the game and beat it, you have to be really good at it.
Oh yeah.
And I think that was the same thing with a lot of N64 games. You had like games like Pilot Wing 64, which again, the first couple levels are really easy. They teach you how to play the game, but later on it gets like bastardly hard. It's ridiculous. So,
I mean, for some games, you needed like when they got a little bit to like the middle stage of the N64, like
yeah,
want to say like 99 ish.
yeah,
They like they had gotten so much more advanced with the processing power that they needed to add
jumper pack.
they needed to add the jumper pack, and they
Well,
also
yeah, no,
need
the expansion pack. The
the
jumper pack
expansion
was
pack.
the original.
The jumper was for the controllers,
No,
right?
no, the jumper pack was the actual like pack that was in there before you got the expansion pack. So it was like actually, it was an expansion of the RAM, so that you could play like
Right.
bigger games, basically,
Right. So
with better
that's what you
graphics.
needed for like Donkey Kong 64, and
Yep.
I remember it came with Donkey Kong 64.
Yes. Yeah. So, and I remember I got Perfect Dark, and I had played it at my friend's house, and this was like back in the day. If you wanted to learn, like, if there was no like internet really. So I mean, there was, but we didn't have it. It wasn't like something that you just went on and browsed like it is now. So if you wanted to see a game, you had to go to your friend's house who had the game and play it there and try it out. So I remember I played it like Perfect Dark at my friend's house, and I was like, oh my god, this game is amazing. It was like the spiritual successor to GoldenEye, and it was so much fun. And then I got it, and but like I didn't have the expansion pack in my console, so I could only play like the multiplayer mode, and it was like only a couple of maps. You couldn't change your character's like face or anything. It was like default
Oh
characters and
wow.
stuff. I was like, what the hell? Like I don't like I why how come I can't play the game? And then I realized I needed the expansion pack, and that actually like allowed you to play the full game. So I mean, it was cool that they allowed you to like at least try it out, without the expansion pack. But
But
I
that
think
but that's a big like feels bad moment when you're like,
yes,
"Oh, I got to get this other thing."
yeah,
Or worse, like how many people didn't know that right away? So they tried to return the game to the store and they were like reported it to be like a damaged copy or
oh
something, or a
yeah,
faulty copy.
yeah.
And then like how many returns happened because they didn't know. I wonder if that's what prompted them to start including the expansion pack in games.
Well, I think they were always going to include it in Donkey Kong 64, because that was like the first game that really needed the expansion pack, I believe. And I think Majora's Mask also was packet, like certain versions of Majora's Mask also came with it, because Majora's Mask also needed the expansion
Yes.
pack. But like I don't think Perfect Dark did. Like you had to have the expansion pack before you got Perfect Dark, and a lot of people just didn't know that at the time, I think. So like, and then eventually like it came out, and again, back in those days news spread a lot slower because the internet wasn't as prominent as it is now. So
Yeah,
like a
like
lot
you
of
would
times
pretty
you had
much
to like,
you pretty much find out from somebody at school.
yeah, you'd find out what somebody at school, or you'd have to read like Nintendo Power or Game Informer or something, the
Yeah.
magazines. uh
That's how we did it in the old days.
and it it was my friends always like got like the best games before I did. Like my friend, like the same one that we played Resident Evil, he got Majora's Mask first and like brought it to my house, and we were playing it. It was the day, I remember very very clearly, it was the day before Thanksgiving, and he came over to my house and we were playing Majora's Mask, and I remember playing as Zora Link and just like jumping around in the ocean, and I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. I need this game. And of course I went to my mom like the next day or that day, and I'm like, hey, could you buy me Majora's Mask? And she's like, no, Christmas is a month away. You have to wait. And I'm like, damn it. And I'm like, so I had to wait a whole month for Christmas to get it. But that was like, growing up, what you did,
Yeah. Oh, I've said this on the show before, but I tricked my parents into getting me a Nintendo 64.
Oh yeah.
It was for those who for those who need to be enlightened, I'll tell the story again because this is the show about this thing. So why wouldn't I? So it was the summer of '97, I believe, and my father's birthday was coming up. So my mom is like, she would do whatever we did. I'm 7 years old, so my mom would do what she always did. And what did your father want for his birthday? Ask him what he wants. Find out what he wants. Again, a time before the internet, a bygone era. And of course, she asked me because I'm the eldest, and I'm like, "Oh, he wants a," and I had wanted a Nintendo 64 for Christmas. That didn't happen. And my other two friends who lived up this block from me, they of course both had one. They were only children, so they of course got everything. So they had their N64s for months. One of them got it for Christmas. The other one got it for his birthday because his birthday's in January. Whatever. So so I can't get this until Christmas because I begged for months, and they were like, "No, Christmas just happened. You have to wait until next Christmas."
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't wait a full year. Oh, what about for my birthday? No, we got you things for your birthday. You can't, we're not going to get you other things. What if you just don't get me a birthday present next year? That's not, that's not going to happen. Nice try. Well, what about for my brother's birthday? His is coming. Your little brother is 2. No. What? But he's going to love it. He's 2. He will love anything that you put in front of him. No. Well, sister's birthday is at the end of the year, so that wouldn't have worked. So what could I do? So I thought of the first lie so I did what anybody would do. I lied to my parents. So I told my mother, "Oh, Dad really wants a tie, and he also really wants a Nintendo 64." Now, at this point, months had gone by since I had last asked for this thing. So she forgot all about it. So she's like, "A Nintendo 60, are you sure he wants a Nintendo?" And I'm just like, "Yes, he's tired of playing the Super Nintendo." And my mom's just like, "He doesn't play the Super Nintendo." And I'm like, "Well, he wants the 64." I was out of options, so of course, his birthday rolls around. He sees a big box and he sees a smaller box. He opens it up and he's like, "Oh, a tie. Gee, thanks." And he's like, "What's in this?" He's like, "Is this like a is this a new suit or is this is this like a DVD player or something?" Cuz DVD players were again a big deal at the time.
Yeah.
So he was wondering, "Oh, what is this? Is this a new like is this a collection of videos that I wanted? Is this a box set of something? What could this thing be?" So my mom's like, I think you're gonna be really excited about this." So
Oh, no.
he opens it up, and of course he's like, "Oh boy, it's a Nintendo 64." And she's like, "Isn't it what you wanted?" And he's like, "I didn't ask for this." And then the next thing that they knew, there I am on the floor opening it up and taking it out of the box. And my mom was just like, she realized what happened, and she's like, she's like, "I can take it back and we can ground him for this." And my dad's just like, "We were gonna get this for him on Christmas anyway." So he's been asking for, he's like, and he realized, and when he put two and two together, he started laughing. So the coast was clear for my grounding.
Yeah.
But he was like, "We were gonna get this for him anyway." And he's just laughing, and he's like, You really let this kid trick you? He's like, how could you? He's like, why would you think that I wanted this? And he's like, he said you did. And he's like, yeah, because he wanted this. He's like, he's been asking for this since last Christmas. So that's how I got the Nintendo 64.
Yep.
That is the first in a that is the first in a long line of of moments where I've tricked people into getting things that not for me, but for them that they well sometimes for me, but it's a long line in things that I've tricked people to do. Another time where I tricked somebody, I'm in college. I'm coming back from the bar or a party or something, one of those things. On my way back to the dorms, some lady also doing the same thing is on the phone or talking to somebody or whatever it is, talking about how they'd like to get a tattoo tonight. This person's probably as inebriated as I am. Their idea is to get the word Hakuna Matata tattooed on their body.
Oh, God.
I overhear this. So, of course, I did what any sane person would do. I lied to a stranger. I told them, that's a great idea. You should really do this. That's an awesome idea for a tattoo. I'd honestly be mad at you if you didn't get this. Who could turn down such a great idea? This won't have any long-lasting decision or repercussions at all. And I go away, and I assume I will never see this person again. I have no idea what, at this point, to my knowledge, nothing happened. Somehow, this person finds me on Facebook the following day. They have tattooed Hakuna Matata on their ankle.
God.
She was cute, by the way. For those who want to know. The tattoo artist spelled it wrong.
Oh, God. Botch.
Me and my roommates laughed very hard that day. There was much rejoicing in that dorm room. I can't say the same for the other one.
Yeah.
Another good story of tricking people. I'm sure there are many others, but I can't think of them now because those are my two best trickeries.
Well,
anyway, the Nintendo 64, that was a glorious day, a glorious moment in the history of me. And I mean, honestly, my favorite game is Banjo-Tooie. Not Banjo-Tooie. Banjo-Kazooie is my favorite Nintendo 64 game. We've talked about this at large in the Banjo-Kazooie episode, which was episode 2, all those years ago.
Yeah. I have probably several favorites, actually. I'm one of my favorite games of all time is Majora's Mask, so that's obviously up there. But like Perfect Dark, Banjo-Kazooie, Jet Force Gemini, there's just so many, like, there were so many amazing games on the Nintendo 64. I don't think there's ever been a console since then that has had the amount of hits that Nintendo 64 had.
The hits almost never stopped. I mean, you could probably count the duds on one hand.
Yes. And even like games that were like movie tie-ins,
and most of those were from like third-party developers that like were knockoffs of something else.
Like, yeah, the most famous, of course, is Superman 64, which was awful. But
yeah,
there weren't like even like most of like the movie tie-in games or like the licensed tie-in games were like amazing. Like Toy Story 2 for the N64 was like one of the best games ever, and it was a friggin' Toy Story game. Like, it was so much fun.
Even like the sports games were really great. Like MLB, like All-Star Baseball 2000 was
Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball.
That was the best. NFL Blitz Still one of my favorites.
Amazing. I love
Still
Blitz.
one of my favorite
It was
games of
so
all
much
time.
fun. Yeah,
Probably my favorite sports game of all time. Not including No Mercy, of course.
Even the racing games like Rush and Rush 2 were like amazing. Like they were just so much fun to play. You could literally I would sit there and play them for hours, like especially like Rush 2 because it had like the stunt course. And like so what I would do is I would put on cheats and I would put on Moon Gravity and go to the stunt course and literally just play for hours just jumping off these jumps and like flying across the map. It was just like it was just so much fun. And like battle tanks, there's just so many, like even the smaller games that were like less well known are like Army Men Sarge's Heroes and
Oh, that's a great game.
a great game. Like there's just so many like gems on this console. And some of my best memories growing up were like playing N64 either alone or with my friends because they were like it was like you couldn't get any better than what they offered. And it was always
Fun fact, in middle school, I called my schlong Sarge's hero.
Oh, God. I,
More on that at 11.
The best part was always, like, going to your friend's house and, like, playing the games that you didn't have, you know? Because, like, everybody had, like, different games that, like, they were able to bribe their parents into getting for them. So, like,
oh, yeah.
You know, you just went and, like, you know, I would go to my one friend's house. We'd play, like, 007 The World Is Not Enough, which was, again, another great game. Even though it wasn't made by Rareware, it was made by EA. It was still an amazing 007 game. You know, I would go to my other friend's house. We'd play Bomberman 64. Like, there were just so many great games to play.
Oh yeah, and you could and just trading games was just super fun to do. Like or like just borrowing games. Like we did more of like a borrowing trade. We didn't do like a permanent trade.
Yeah, and me and my friends would always we
would try to beat. Sorry.
We would try to like beat games. Like if one of us was stuck, the other one would come over and like try to beat the levels. Like I remember I was stuck on one level of Star Wars Shadows of the Empire for so long, and then finally my friend came over and got through it, and I was like, oh my God. And like so we like played and like beat the game because like we finally got through the level I couldn't beat, you know. And that was like it was just such an achievement back then to do that.
I remember when we were recording the album and we were just kind of like, we're just like winding down for the night, and we were just like, you know, we were just like bouncing ideas and like, and just, you know, just doing whatever as we were like finalizing things. And I think you were just like doing some mixes and like making sure that like levels were okay. So I was playing, I forget if I was also playing, I may have been playing Shadows of the Empire also,
I think you are, yeah.
And like I beat it like from start to finish that day.
Yeah.
Like just that night because we were just up for so long.
Yeah.
And that like just that alone was just like a super fun memory. And just
some of the best Star Wars games like were on the N64, like Shadows of the Empire, Rogue Squadron.
Yeah, Pod Racers.
Episode 1 Racer. I've like still played it this day. I actually have it on my PC and I still play it sometimes because it was such a great racing game. And Star Wars Battle for Naboo. It was like that was like one of the best games, and it was just like
I never played that one.
Oh, it was made by the same people who made Rogue Squadron, except it was like the Phantom Menace. So like you could fly.
Oh wow.
You could fly all like, and they actually had like speeders. You could like they had ground battles, which was pretty cool.
Oh, that is that is pretty neat.
Yeah.
And who could forget Smash Brothers, which was like the coolest thing ever because it was just like it came out of nowhere, and it was just like you just one day you saw it on the shelf and you didn't even know, like you went to Toys R Us, you saw it on the shelf, and like unless you read like Nintendo Power or Game Informer, like this was also a time where it was great bounty and good tidings and great cheer for the magazine industry because they like you could forget it. This was like the silver age of journalism in a way.
Yeah.
Where like this is just the zombie age.
It's the dirt age.
It's beyond that. It's just
terrible.
They're just zombies. It's just a zombie industry now.
Yeah.
But anyway, other than to get around the doom and gloom, the um you would like you just kind of walked into a Toys R Us, or you maybe saw like one of the many video game magazines talking about this Super Smash Brothers thing, and it just looked like it just came out of nowhere. You saw it on the shelf, and you were like, "What is this?" Mario is punching Pikachu, and like you got the game, and you were like, your mind was instantly blown because there was so much crossover from
Yes.
like not even just Nintendo, from like, yeah, it was all Nintendo IP, but it was just like, holy freaking crap. Like I hadn't seen anything like this since like the only other thing that you could compare it to was like Marvel versus Capcom, but you were like, this is self-contained for Nintendo. This is the greatest thing on earth. And
Yep.
it was just such a smooth game that, you know, I mean, look at the legacy of it. Well, we can get to Super Smash Brothers by itself in another episode because
Right.
I think that deserves its own
Oh
episode.
yeah, absolutely. I remember. I just want to like share a quick memory on it. Is that I remember when heard about it. I think I read it about it in Nintendo Power when they first announced it, and like they kind of announced it as like, oh, you know, it's gonna be like a giant like fighting game where you could play as all your favorite Nintendo characters. And I assumed at the time that meant like literally all the Nintendo 64 characters. So you're
Oh
gonna play as
wow.
like GoldenEye, like James Bond from GoldenEye or Turok. And I was like, oh, it's gonna be so cool. You're gonna have Link, and he's gonna like James Bond's gonna like shoot at him, and he'll block it with his shield, and like you know. And of course, it wasn't that, but it was still an amazing game regardless. And again, so many great memories playing Super Smash Brothers, the original.
Well,
I remember.
I also have a lot of really great memories because there were so many publications that like you would bring your magazines to school
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
would trade magazines with people, and like you would borrow that for however long, as long, and they would borrow yours, or sometimes you would just let them keep it because they would like you do like a full on trade. Like that one we weren't, it wasn't really that big of a deal with like trades because sometimes they were like, listen, I'll give you two Nintendo powers um for Game Informer from like 2 months ago because that has the cheat code that I need,
yeah.
or like whatever it is. So like that wasn't so bad. Or even like the strategy guides and the walkthroughs that you would buy for all these games, which,
Hmm.
you know, you don't really get so much anymore. Like you could just Google it really quick and like just find a quick YouTube video on like whatever it is that you need to know. But like you either had to figure it out or you had to like know somebody who knew what to do, or get a strategy guide, or like
Yeah.
find it in a magazine or something. It was just, you really had to go the extra mile to like beat difficult games. So
Yes.
we grew up tough, damn it. That's
Yeah.
why we don't give up as easily as these Gen Zs and Zoomers.
Yeah.
We were in the trenches of gaming,
I remember.
trying to unlock everything. Hey, remember that when everything in the game was already there and you just had to play it enough to unlock it and figure it out, and you didn't have to and you weren't forced into buying all the extra goodies. What happened to those days? Can we get that back?
Yeah. I remember Smash Brothers became like one of our like go-to like games, like even like throughout high school whenever we had a party at someone's house we would play, like end up like everyone would end up like sitting around the TV taking turns playing Smash, like the original Smash Brothers on
Oh yeah,
N64.
this
It-
carried on through like my 20s even. If
yeah,
I went to a party, like
yeah,
people would like they'd either have Melee or 64
yep,
at like at like whoever's house party it was.
yep,
And like there was just always a group of people who only came to the party to like drink and play Smash Brothers,
yeah.
or
Yeah,
just
pretty
to
much.
play Smash Brothers.
Yeah,
Like they were like, regardless of how many, you know, regardless of how many girls were at the party, their interest was playing Smash Brothers.
yeah, yeah.
And like
That was
some
like
people,
pretty much what we did too.
yeah, like it was just funny.
Yeah, I remember all the rumors too, like growing up on the schoolyard, like everyone thought like, oh, you could unlock Charmander and you could unlock Goku, and it was
Yes,
like all these like crazy like conspiracy theories about what secret characters there were.
yeah, all of the gaming urban legends
Yeah,
stem from the playground.
yep. And I think N64 by far had the most urban legends of any like console. At least in my memory. I don't remember ever like talking about, oh, there's like secrets you can unlock in this game on like Xbox or anything like after that. Like
The only, I
N64
mean,
was like the secret
oh
console.
yeah, I mean the only rumors that I ever really heard for like other consoles were like either the Pokemon that you could unlock in like whatever like video, whatever like whatever super whatever Game Boy game that like that was around that was a Pokemon game, or like Pokemon that they like, or like fake Pokemon names that like rumors spread where like no one really knows how they got there.
Yep.
Um or like or like I want to say the PS1 like famous PS1 rumor where you could, or like if you entered in a certain combination at the right time, you could see Lara Croft naked,
Oh yeah.
which was never a thing,
Yeah.
but so many people just wanted it to be real
Of course.
because pervs.
Yeah. Well,
and and you know, adolescents with this was the best thing that they could that they got was just they were into
yeah.
polygons.
Well,
The hottest woman in the world was a polygon. Oh boy. Take that, do what you will with that information. Um and people would constantly like try to like wish that into existence, and it was
yeah.
like no, the people would get fired if they did that.
Yeah.
So no, that was not a code. Um but yeah, I remember hearing so many different like Smash Brother characters that, and everybody, and the crazy thing about so many of these rumors is that everybody heard them. Like
Yes.
it doesn't matter what state or what country they grew up in.
Yeah.
Everybody listening knows exactly what we're talking about because they
Yeah.
all heard the same rumor.
If you grew up in that time on the schoolyard, you knew you know exactly. You know all of them. They were like universal.
Yeah. It was
I
so weird.
I think, you know,
And there
it's
would always be that one kid who swore that they did it.
yes, of course. Yeah. Oh, I did it, but my save game got deleted, so I lost
Yeah.
it.
It's
Yeah. There was
always
always some
that.
stupid excuse, like, no one actually had proof of it. They would just, like, heard it from someone else who heard it from someone else who actually did it, you know, like, it was never, like, actually, like, oh, yeah, like, you know, or that, like, if they did it, they, like, lost it, you know? Oh, I lost it. It got deleted, you know? It was like,
Yeah, oh,
okay.
my brother did it, and
Yeah.
the game doesn't save. It like freezes after you do it.
Yeah.
Like there would always be that like out,
Yeah.
but you believed it because because what proof was there that it didn't exist?
Yeah.
And also, we were like 10.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Like,
You believed anything you heard back then, you know?
yeah.
I remember one of my friends, like,
For God's sakes, we still thought that we still believed in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. Like so logic wasn't really like that developed at the time.
one of my friends started a rumor that in like the Japanese version of like Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, you could have like sex with Zelda or something like
Oh
that.
my god!
Oh my! It was like wow, like because we're all like, oh yeah, in Japan they don't care, they don't censor anything, like so it's a whole thing.
Of course,
Yeah,
of course, they would say, "Well, in the Japanese version, I heard."
yeah, exactly. It was always like, oh, in the Japanese version, it was like it became like the phrase, oh well, in the Japanese version, like
Yeah, like how people had said for like years in the Japanese anime of Yu-Gi-Oh that like the monsters were like beheaded and died for
yeah,
real.
yeah.
And like if you watch that, it's like not really. It was a little bit more violent, but not really.
Well, the manga was significantly more violent than the
The
actual
manga,
show.
yes.
They toned it down way for the show. In the show, Yugi actually like murders people. Like he kills like a dude in like the first issue.
In the
Like
manga?
outright kills him. Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he outright kills a guy.
Holy
Who's like
crap.
he's like a mugger or something, and he's like holding like Taya at gunpoint, and like Yugi tricks him into like burning himself alive by like pouring
my
like,
God.
vodka all over himself and like dropping a lighter.
What?
Yeah, it's like significantly more violent than the show was.
Oh yeah, I found it on Reddit. Remember when Yami Yugi straight up murdered people with games?
Yeah.
And they like there's the panel.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. I might have to
Uh,
find this and read it.
They changed it to the show to like, oh, he just banishes them to the Shadow Realm or whatever. But yeah, he like killed people in the manga.
Wow. That's pretty badass.
Yeah,
I gotta read this.
yeah. Uh,
Anyway.
yeah. Anyway, back to the N64. I like. I don't think there's ever been a console since then that personally for me captured the magic of the N64. Like I remember like being so excited when I got it for Christmas, and like it was just such an amazing console. And I don't like, I got other consoles later on for Christmas, and they were like, I obviously it was always great, to get something. It's like a new video game and blah blah blah. But like I don't think anything ever could capture the magic like the N64 did. It was just like it was like really the perfect console.
It was. No, that meme of that eternal America's Funniest Home Video meme of the kid and his
Yes.
sister like spazzing out over
Yes.
the Nintendo 64.
Yeah, scream
That's
Nintendo 64. Like that
yeah.
was
That's how that
every
was accurate.
yes, that was every American kid's Christmas in like the late 90s.
Yeah. Well,
And
and their father's birthdays.
yeah, yeah. And it was just like again, there's no console that's really captured that same, feeling for me personally, at least. There's others that like that I got really excited about. Like when the original Xbox came out, I remember being completely blown away by the graphics at the time. Which again, looking back, they're not great now, but like back then, like I have never seen anything that good.
Yeah, like you were like I mean, what do we have to compare it to again? It was
The
flat
N64.
graphics it was flat graphics in this.
Yeah. So, but gameplay wise, there was nothing ever that could compare to the N64. And like the first time playing Ocarina of Time and Super Mario 64 and like just Perfect Dark and all like the list goes on and on of how awesome it was and how many great games there were. And
Yeah, I mean it revolutionized the industry because after
yes,
that, like they like for every game they were like, no, the camera matters.
yes,
Like that
yeah,
was because the camera itself was such a new thing because again going from 32-bit flat graphics to 3D graphics, totally different.
this
Was
was
like
also a time that most other
And they were learning as they went along, and you could see that in the development of games. Like Nintendo, for their proprietary games, they obviously like set the bar and they knew what they wanted and they had figured that out. But
yeah,
you could see others that were not Nintendo that were making their games at the same time that, their camera angles were usually not very good, like Resident Evil, like we said.
yes. Which I kind of like understand the Resident Evil camera angles because it was trying to like build atmosphere and make it scarier because like you don't see what's coming at you off screen, but they can be annoying.
Right.
Uh, yeah, and really this was the time too that like during the 90s there were a lot of consoles. Like people don't realize because most of them like were like just not well known and a lot didn't like have like had really poor sales in America. But you had like the TurboGrafx 16, the 3DO. There was tons and tons of home consoles at the time, and this generation was like really like the last of that where there was so many different things. This is really where we entered into the big three. Like first you had Nintendo, PlayStation, and Sega competing, and then Sega failed pretty bad with the Dreamcast, unfortunately, and then it was for a while just Sega or just Nintendo and PlayStation, Sony, and then Microsoft came in with the Xbox. But after that, it was really only those big three that continued making consoles. So this was like, in a lot of ways, the Nintendo 64 was kind of like the console killer because it like really like nobody could compete with the N64 except for Sony,
Yeah.
basically, and until Microsoft came around, and by that time you had the GameCube, so it like was completely like it completely changed everything. And the PlayStation 2, which obviously like became like the great, I believe still to this day is the highest selling console of all time. But Nintendo has hung in there unlike any other, really, because
Oh yeah. I mean, this console lasted like a good 6 years too.
yes, yeah, they were still making
They had
games.
a really good cycle.
The last game released for the N64, and this was well into the GameCube's life cycle at this point, was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, which came out in 2002.
I didn't
So
even know that came out for N64.
yeah, it was the last game released on N64.
Wow.
So, and actually, it came out pretty late. It came out in 2001, but for other consoles, it was really, the PlayStation
Yeah.
2 and uh actually came out for the original PlayStation as well.
That's a little baffling that it came out on the Nintendo 64 and wasn't a GameCube release.
It did come out on GameCube.
Did it?
Yes,
Oh,
it
I
did.
did not know.
I
I've
played it on
never
GameCube.
I've never seen Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 for the GameCube.
Yeah.
Then again, I've never seen it for the Nintendo 64, so what do
Well,
I
yeah,
know?
there you go. Yeah, I think I originally played it on GameCube when it came out.
Wow, I wonder if that version is worth more money.
The N64 version. It
Yeah.
might be because it was at the end of the
I'm
N64's
sure
life
they
cycle.
didn't I'm sure they didn't print that many cartridges for that one.
No.
I'm sure they printed a lot, but I don't think.
Well, no, because probably wasn't a great seller because again most people had already moved on to GameCube by that point.
Yeah. You could get that for between 30 and 70 in the depending on what cartridge you get. If you've got a gray cartridge, it's if you got a gray cartridge, it is about $30. If you get the black cartridge, it's about $70. And and in box it's about 85. So, yeah, that's I'm not comparing it to the other ones, but I know for like PS2, it's like a $10 game.
Yeah.
So that goes to show you.
We also have to kind of mention that the Nintendo 64's development is partially responsible for the Sony PlayStation
Yeah.
because originally Sony was and I think we had mentioned this on a previous show at
Well,
some
they
point.
started working on this in '93.
Yes. So and Sony was developing the disk drive system for the N64. There was which later came out, but it wasn't really well received, and I think it only came out in Japan actually.
Yeah, wasn't there like a second console? Wasn't there a second portion that stacked onto the
Yes.
Nintendo 64 in the original
And
design?
like I said, I'm pretty sure it only came out in Japan. I don't think there was really many things on it. Like it. So I guess there was SimCity 64, Mario Artist. There was a couple of different games that like were not released in America, obviously, because this didn't come out in America. This peripheral. So, but Sony originally worked on this, and there was a dispute between the developers, and Sony ended up pulling out of the project and making their own console. And lo and behold, the PlayStation was born.
Yeah.
So the Nintendo 64 is somewhat responsible for its own
For its greatest competitor.
Yeah.
Kind of funny how that happens. It's almost like a villain origin.
Yeah,
Or
it kind of is. But what else can you say? I mean, the console is it was amazing. It still is. I still have mine. I play it from time to time.
I recently departed from my Nintendo 64 earlier this summer, and let me tell you, that and all of my games, I made out like such a bandit because I bought so many of those games when nobody wanted them before anything had happened with like this whole crazy like COVID collector frenzy. I had I didn't make life-changing money, but I made way more than I had bought everything for. So hold on to certain things for now. But yeah, it was nice to see. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
But
Luckily,
I do miss it. But if there's it just would take up too much space. So I wasn't using it, so somebody else can enjoy it. But you could get a Nintendo 64 for anywhere between like 150 and 250 depending on which color you buy.
Yeah.
And you could there's the good thing is there was so much of this printed, and there's so many retro stores and so many people just willing to just sell this, and like there's just so much available that if you wanted to, you could get your hands on an N64 again, like now,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't be like too crazy.
Well, and even if you don't want to buy the console and if you have a Nintendo Switch, Nintendo has now released the Switch Online Nintendo
That
64
too.
app, which I really like it. I wish they would add more games. I think the variety of games they've added so far has been a little slow and not as good, but they did just add Jet Force Gemini, which I'm really excited about and I want to play because I love that game. Um, but and I one thing I think they do need to do with that is add like the ability to edit controls in the like app itself. Because
Mm,
like there's certain games like GoldenEye 64 where you actually have to make a custom control scheme to make it playable. Otherwise, because like it's like weird, or you have to buy like Nintendo's like new Switch like N64 controllers, which I don't want to spend $50 to buy a controller, you know.
right.
So they that's one thing they have to do is make the control schemes better. But otherwise, it's pretty fun. It's got like a lot of the classics like Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, and some of the more obscure stuff like Pokemon Puzzle League, which is kind of fun. And like Win Back, like which is
Mm,
another really obscure game.
I don't know that one.
Yeah.
That does
Uh,
also remind me of Pokemon Stadium, which was
oh
also another gangbusters game. And
yes,
who could forget Pokemon Snap?
yeah, of course. Which again, all available on the Nintendo 64 Switch app, which is great.
Yes. Oh, for those wondering, the most expensive version of the Nintendo 64 is the Hey You Pikachu exclusive with the color scheme and Pikachu and the
Yep.
Pokeball start thing. That's I don't know anybody who bought that, and I don't know anybody who had any desire in playing Hey You Pikachu, but if you own one, good for you.
Hmm.
That's you're looking at least 250 out of that one.
Nice.
Anyway, continue.
That's pretty much it. It's a great thing if you could get your hands on one. You should. It's one of the best consoles of all time. If not, try to get it, play emulator or play it on the Switch, and
Yeah, you've
it's
got plenty of options, my
y-
friend.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, well said. Just unbelievable console. Still
hmm
wonderful to this day. I have a painting actually that I did years ago. I did coming up on it's about 8 years ago in 2016. It's called Retro Cowboy, and it's a Nintendo 64 controller mocked up to look like a Western cowboy with two six shooters drawn and a cowboy hat on top.
yeah.
It's quite funny.
That's pretty good.
I'll
I
send you a
have a
pic. I'll send you a picture in a little bit. I did this
yeah.
myself. It was just funny. I drew the first thing that came to my mind. So like, I painted it, and then like I don't know, but
I I actually a couple of years ago bought a Nintendo 64 hoodie. I saw it at Walmart and I was like, "Oh my god, I have to have this." And it's got like the logo on the front and it's like gray with red sleeves, so it like kind of looks like, the Nintendo 64 colors. And I was like,
nice.
it's still one of my favorite hoodies to this day. So, yeah.
A treasured time,
Yeah,
a treasured timepiece for anybody for
a,
every gamer.
definitely a better time.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time to do all this. We really appreciate each and one of you, and we want to wish you a very, very, very happy holiday season. Just we wish you all the best.
Yep.
I'm trying to find the Krusty the Clown quote. Here we go. So have a mer so for from all of us to you in digital media device land. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, a Quasi Kwanzaa, a Tip Top Tet, and a solemn dignified Ramadan. This has been Why Does This Exist? I've been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
And remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.